All right, welcome everyone. My name is Bob Nave. I'm Senior Vice President of Research at Florida TaxWatch. And joining me today is my colleague, Kurt Wenner, who is also a Senior Vice President at Florida TaxWatch. And the subject of today's discussion is the Florida TaxWatch Budget Watch document and the implications for the upcoming legislative session. So Kurt, we just released the Budget Watch document. Can you take a couple of minutes and tell us about that document?
Sure. The Budget Watch is something we release about semi-monthly that kind of tracks what's going on and the fiscal condition of the state, tracking the budget, revenue estimates, budget proposals, that sort of thing. And our Budget Watch has been highlighting how quickly state revenues have been recovering from the initial significant slide from the pandemic. We have bounced back considerably. We're now up above the pre-pandemic levels. The last couple estimating conferences have increased collection estimates significantly. And now this new Budget Watch is focusing on what's happened since the last estimates, which were only a couple months ago back in August. In the 2 months of collections that we have since then, collections have already exceeded the estimate for those 2 months by almost $800 million. So we're 3 months into the fiscal year. There's an additional $800 million that we weren't anticipating on top of all the other money that we've been building up.
And yeah, when I look back at the budget over the last couple of years, I look back to the fiscal year 2019-20 budget, which I think was about $91 billion in change. And now the current fiscal year budget is just north of $100 billion. And the 2021-22 budget stands to be even greater than that. Kurt, where's all this money coming from?
Well, a lot of it is coming from the federal government. A lot of it is coming from, like I said, increased revenue collections. And we thought we were going to have a really bad fiscal situation, but the legislature and the governor did take some steps to try to ameliorate that. And then the revenues just rebounded very quickly from that initial drop. Then we've also got all this the federal money that's come in. And a lot of the federal money that they appropriated last fiscal year isn't even really included in that what you call the record $101 billion budget for the current budget year that we're in. It would have been another $15–16 billion if they would have counted everything that's in what they call the back of the bill, which is where a lot of the federal money was appropriated. So there's a lot of federal dollars last year that helped get it up. And now with revenue, with the GR estimates increasing so much and a lot of non-general revenue estimates like transportation and the lottery, things that go to education, those are also increasing above estimates. You know, we were already at probably $7 billion general revenue reserves. If you add in the additional money from the recovery fund, from the American Rescue Plan that we have not yet appropriated, which is another $3.5 billion, you know, we're up to about $10 billion of unobligated reserves that's going to go forward into this year, into this next budget year, where I think that the legislature is going to be putting together in January and February of next year. Then you look at what's been going on with the revenue estimates for the current fiscal year, and they're adding even more dollars. So this the 2022 legislature is going to have to make some real decisions about how they're going to spend all this money. We have, even though most of it is non-recurring because it's money that's pulled forward, there is a lot more additional recurring revenue. And when these revenue estimates are increased, most of that money is going to be recurring as well. So they have a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been a situation where we've had so much free money to spend, money that's kind of been piling up. So, we're asking the legislature to still, take their time. Don't have to spend all this money at one time. We after the recession and the bubble bursting back a decade or so ago, we found out what can happen if you spend a bunch of windfall money, and then all of a sudden things turn south. And we do still have some unknowns to the economy, so we need to be careful. We need to not spend all the money, and we need to really figure out what's the best way to use, particularly this federal money, to give taxpayers the best return on their investment.
Well, we've heard a lot lately about people who have left the workforce during the pandemic and who are not returning to the workforce now that things are easing up a little bit. So where is all of this extra general revenue coming from? I mean, given the sources of general revenue and the transactional nature of that money, it seems like people are spending a lot more.
Yeah, they are, and that leads to the concerns I was talking about. In these first 2 months of actual collections that have just been released, a month of collections reflects the activity of the previous month. So this August and September collections still were impacted by the stimulus dollars, the extra money that Floridians had. Also during the pandemic, they saved at a record level, and that now they're starting to several months ago, they began spending that money. That increased the sales tax collections, which is certainly, it's the biggest general revenue source, and it's the biggest reason we're so far over the estimate. And also during the pandemic, spending switched from the non-tax service sector to more to goods, which are taxable. So that mix also boosted sales tax. So that leads to the fact that savings is being reduced. We don't have this savings rate that we had several months ago. That's going to impact it. That mix I talked about of sales tax spending is going to return to more normal. And then we still have some real unknowns, and the COVID-19 still poses a threat to the economy. So whether or not we're going to keep this level up of revenue exceeding collections is debatable. We could still add a little bit more than this 800 million. But we'll just have to wait and see how things go. But this is now the 14th month in a row that estimates actual collections have surpassed the current estimate at the time. And again, they've increased the estimates 3 times significantly since the trough of the pandemic. So even though we keep increasing the estimates, collections keep beating those estimates. And I think it's going to continue for a little bit. Whether it continues throughout the year, I don't know. But hopefully we won't have a reduction. We'll wait and see when the Revenue Estimating Conference gets together at the first of the year to do the final estimate for how much money the legislature is going to have to spend for the new budget. We'll see how much of this revenue increase they'll adopt and how much money we'll actually have. But no matter what happens, there's going to be billions of dollars that they're going to have to figure out what to do with.
At what point did we reach pre-pandemic collection levels?
The last estimates got us back up over the pre-pandemic. So we're not only collecting more than we did before the pandemic, we're collecting more than we thought we were going to be collecting before the pandemic. So it's almost like, from a fiscal standpoint, certainly there was a lot of personal loss involved, but from a fiscal standpoint, it's almost like nothing happened from the state budget. Like there wasn't this problem and economic slowdown, because we've pretty much fully recovered. And then you throw in the many, many, many billions of dollars of federal aid that's come directly to the state and local governments, or to government programs, or to the individuals, which that extra money has helped boost our tax revenue as well.
With inflation as high as it currently is, would you expect measures to reduce inflation, curb spending to affect the collections as we go forward?
Well, if it curbs spending, certainly that would have an impact. We'll see with the supply chain problems we're having, inflation. Those are significant impediments and could really kind of slow down economic growth. We'll have to see what happens. I know that there's a lot of attempts to try to do things about the supply chain and the problems with distribution that we're having in this country. But from what I've been hearing, there's still a very significant problem. So you're probably not going to get all the toys you asked for Christmas, Bob. But
Just ask for one.
There's a major problem with distribution of goods right now, and that needs to be addressed.
Now, a lot of that federal money, as you mentioned earlier, is non-recurring, and I know there will be a temptation to spend that money for recurring reasons. Do you see this money going more toward member projects, or do you anticipate an escalation in the number of member projects since the state is flush with all this cash?
Well, I think if you look directly at the about $3.5 billion of American Rescue Plan money that came directly to the state that we haven't spent yet, I think the legislature is either going to try to save most of that since we've spent most of it already. If they do spend it, I think it will be on infrastructure related or other kind of recurring expenses. I think with the extra money that we have in the budget right now, the unobligated GR reserve, I think that's where you're going to see a push for member projects. And again, member projects can be a good thing. They can be good projects, but we need to make sure that, really locally focused issues aren't funded at the expense of statewide issues, and that if these member projects are funded, they are funded with the same kind of deliberation and discussion and competitiveness of normal appropriation. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of member projects this year, because you can only spend non-recurring funds on that. We have a lot of non-recurring revenue. So that could happen. I do think that the legislature is very aware of the fact that you don't want to spend non-recurring revenue on recurring expenses. It creates a problem down the road. That said, a lot of the education federal assistance that's come and gone to school districts is being spent on recurring expenses. Now, when that goes away, when that federal assistance, but there's still an awful lot of federal assistance left to spend. If that's being spent on recurring expenses and that federal funds dried it up, we're going to either have to cut those things or make up for it with state recurring revenues. So that's another issue that the legislature is going to have to consider.
And we've now been going through several weeks of committee meetings, and I know the agencies are laying out their budget requests for fiscal year 22-23. Are you seeing anything that with the big budget drivers like Medicaid and education and corrections? Are those budgets expected to go way up, or if you had a chance to look at that?
Well, the Medicaid, certainly, yes, because of the estimates that we've seen about the caseloads and the expenditures for Congress. The states, the cost of Medicaid is going up because the rolls have increased so much. To make it potentially even worse, the federal government, as part of the stimulus and aid to the states, increased the FMAP, which is the amount of the percentage of Medicaid that they pay for. That's been increased. It's supposed to keep up through the public health emergency, which is still in effect on the federal level. It's going to last at least through the end of this year, but what happens after that, we don't know. If that goes away as scheduled, that means that Florida is going to have to pay a greater portion of a larger cost for Medicaid. So that could also be a significant hit that the legislature is going to have to be wary of and make sure that they factor into whatever they decide to spend.
Well, one last question, and again, you've been very generous with your time today, and I appreciate that. Are we in a unique situation? Is this return to pre-pandemic, exceed pre-pandemic collections, all this money to spend? Is this unique to Florida, or are other states, are they enjoying this same extra money?
Well, I think with the federal aid and the recovery in a lot of states, I guess I could safely say that a lot of states didn't experience the problems that they thought they were going to experience. I think Florida may be even in better shape in terms of its economy and the way its revenues are reacting. And certainly if you're talking about it being unique, it's unique to Florida, the magnitude that we have. I don't think there's ever been a situation where this legislature is going to have so much money that above, say, just funding a continuation budget from this year, funding all the recurring stuff that's in the current budget. I don't think there's ever been a situation that after they do that, they're going to have as much money left over as they're going to have to spend on, whether it be new initiatives or big infrastructure investments, whatever it may be. But there's member projects. It may be, there's a lot of dollars out there.
Okay, well, Kurt, I have no more questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we break?
No, I appreciate it, but Florida TaxWatch will be following this and following what the legislature does during the session with the budget. We'll report to everybody what's happening, and I think that the leadership in the legislature is going to take a kind of cautious approach with this extra money, which is good. We can need to spread it out as much as possible, because we're not going to always have this much money to spend.
Well, Kurt, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise and knowledge with us. I would encourage anyone who is interested to read the latest Budget Watch. It's available on the Florida TaxWatch website. And Kurt, we look forward to seeing the next one in a couple of months.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, everyone.